What can I say that hasn't already been said hundreds, thousands of times? Americans don't appreciate outsiders criticising them, especially the British, who they like to say are the reason that they have massive personal access to guns. Mass murder shouldn't become tedious. Mass murder of children, especially, shouldn't become tedious. And yet, it has. Each of these stories just gets met with an eye roll and, again? This is a political issue, but politicising an obviously political issue is seen as somehow disrespectful or disruptive. Oh, we can't have the conversation now. Oh, it's too soon. Well, if not now, when? The best thing you can do for the dead is to do what you can to stop whatever it is that killed them from happening again. And that requires politics. And that requires tackling America's gun problem. There is no will to do so, even though mass personal gun ownership rests upon a twisted, flimsy, and extreme interpretation of the American Constitution far more out of line than Roe versus Wade ever was. So I suppose, if overturning Roe v. Wade sticks, then that opens the way for other interpretations, far weaker than Roe v. Wade, to be overturned. It's amazing that one American political party cares so much about the unborn, yet not enough about the born to even ensure their supply of baby formula, or to do what's necessary to stop them being shot. No other developed nation has this problem. Why? The most obvious outlier is the guns themselves. Guns are obvious as a problem. America is a massive outlier in this respect. Even if guns themselves don't kill people, as childish people, worried they might lose their toys, like to say, they do make it a hell of a lot easier to kill people. Statistically speaking, we know that owning a gun for self-defense worsens your outcomes. It doesn't better them. It ups the ante in any conflict that you get involved in, and you're more likely, statistically, to see that gun harm yourself or your family through accident or suicide than you ever are to use that firearm in self-defense. 90% of Americans want, at the very least, universal background checks. But capital has corrupted the government so much that even that meagre half measure will likely never happen. Some like to say the problem isn't guns, it's mental health. But the same people deflecting to mental health would never vote for universal healthcare or even universal mental health care provision that might provide access to that for people, even though it's probably not really that. Some like to say it's God, or rather a lack thereof. But America is also an outlier amongst developed nations in terms of its religiosity. It's far more prevalent religion in America than in other developed nations. It's not God. The more godless nations don't have this problem. Correlation is not causation, but that would rather suggest that religious belief is part of the problem, rather than the solution. Some say it's the culture, and they're probably right to an extent. But guns are part of that culture. Remove the guns, change the culture. Other developed nations do have different cultures. They tend to be more communitarian in culture and government. Those nations that also have large-scale firearms ownership have firearms held for actual militias in small countries, with national service, proper training, proper safeguards, and all manner of regulations around those firearms. It's hard to change a culture, and America still reacts with great hostility to any communitarian thought, to the very idea of regulation. So nothing will change here. America doesn't care how many people, how many children it sacrifices to the great god of guns, or at least it doesn't care enough to change anything, to vote differently. And the people they vote for, their elected leaders, are captured by capital and will not execute the will of the people. There will be hand-wringing. There will be more lunatic ideas like turning schools into fire risks by restricting them to a single point of access. But that is all. Nothing will be done. Not even the lunatic suggestions, or the ones that might have a positive outcome even though they're lunatic suggestions, such as providing for mental health care. Before too long, we will be having this tedious, pointless conversation again, while the bodies cool. And those of us outside the US will throw up our hands and will write it off to you being insane and addicted, our crazy crackhead neighbour who's had his kids taken away. And it'll happen again, and it will happen again, and it will happen again, until it's just routine.